Thanks so much for joining us here on Atlanta News First Plus. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin. Just want to join you now with some news that we continue to follow, a developing story. Former President Donald Trump's legal team has filed a motion to quash the Fulton County grand jury report. Of course, we've been following the story of this grand jury report and the fallout. Remember that earlier this year, in February actually, part of that report was released, and it was following a special grand jury investigation into the former president's and his allies' alleged efforts to overturn his 2020 election loss. Of course, Fulton, you saw Fonnie Willis, Fulton County District Attorney, had called for this special investigation. So again, now the major development is that the former president's legal team has now filed this motion, what you're looking at on your screen right now, and they want to quash this grand jury report. This was submitted by his Atlanta-based attorneys, and it requests for the findings of the grand jury to be expunged from the record, claiming that all the evidence from the grand jury should be suppressed, or else that would be unconstitutional. So I want to bring in, joining us right now, very special guests, legal analyst, attorney Erica Wilson joining us. Erica, first of all, what do you think of this motion to quash? Is it sort of out of left field, or do you think it has legs?
Well, it's not out of left field, and these are the type of things that we typically, boilerplate motions that we typically file once we get these type of things in. So I'm not surprised to see that it has actually gone out. Now, the next part of that question is how successful they will be on it. Not very. The special convened grand jury, their report, you're asking basically for a judge to throw out his ruling. It's essentially a tantamount to that, because these proceedings are specifically convened, these jurors are specifically convened for a very specific and special purpose, and so asking for their findings to be disregarded is going to be a very high hurdle for his attorneys to be able to overcome.
So if it's not likely that the findings could be disregarded altogether, is there some way in which the grand jury report could be quashed? For instance, when it was released, remember, we got that document as it was released in February, but it was very heavily redacted, and it was very vague, quite frankly. No information that identified parties was available in that. Is that the sort of thing that could be suppressed as a result of this motion? I mean, what could be suppressed?
I will never say never, and this is a case of first impression, because in our generation, when have we ever seen a president involved in such scandal in this way? And so I would not, venture out to say that it cannot be done. I did go through some of their filings, and I mean, they do have what appears to be on the surface some sufficient legal grounds, at least to be able to make the ask, right? Because we have to be able to state what we're asking for that has some legal merit in the motion. So they have enumerated a lot of different things that they feel were constitutional violations that occurred when convening this special grand jury. And so I won't ever say never. I just will be interested to see what the end result will be.
Sure, that is very understandable. What do you think that the prosecution should be doing now, knowing that this motion has been filed? What do you think they should be doing to kind of prepare to react?
Well, they're going to do what they always do, and what we as attorneys always do. Once we are served with something, then our wheels get to turning, and then we, file some sort of response, because we have to be on the defensive at this point, because they have asked to kind of overturn the proceedings that the state has done. And so in this state, what would happen is that they will make the necessary filings, they will file their response, they will be working very vigorously to be able to address all of the enumerated allegations that are in the motion, to do that, and then be able to come up with a valid legal response in order to be able to defend their position in hopes that their motion will be thrown out.
And when we were covering just that, just the release of that initial report, when it came out, at that time, there was still a long way to go in that process, because it was a recommendation what that grand jury came out with. They did not have the power to actually issue indictments, and it was going to be up to Miss Willis, Fulton County District Attorney Miss Willis, to decide whether to actually seek indictments from a regular grand jury for all the alleged efforts to overturn the 2020 presidential election. So my question to you is, could that be impacted by this process? I mean, even if they don't, aren't successful in quashing that report, how does this affect the whole flow?
Well, in terms of how it would impact it, is you have to look at it like this. The special convened grand jury, they had a very specific purpose. This grand jury had powers that other grand juries don't have. They had the power to subpoena, they had the power to request evidence, they could submit questions that they want asked, and then what they did is they kind of got together and then they generated a report, and then they made recommendations that Fani Willis can either follow or she can completely disregard. But what we do know is that she intends to follow, this, because this was a very protracted process, and they took very, great care in making sure that they were able to address all the legalities that they wanted to be able to address. And I think that it does carry a lot of weight in terms of what Fani Willis will do next. So irrespective of whether or not the report is thrown out, whether or not Trump's team is successful, that won't impact Fani Willis's ability to move forward with indictments, because she can still move forward with seeking charges against him.
Yeah, absolutely. Anything else you think we need to consider in this whole issue of this motion to quash?
I mean, I think we're all waiting with breath that is bated on this, because again, this is a case of first impression. We typically don't have a former president involved in this level, especially here in Georgia on state levels where we're dealing on our own home turf and dealing with elections. So this is a case of first impression. I think we should all be watching just to see just what the impact will be in terms of what will happen with Trump, what will happen with voter rights in the future, what will happen in terms of being able to protect and insulate the voting process, so that way we don't have these issues or concerns. And I think we all should be looking out and just making sure, particularly when the next election rolls around, to just make sure that they're address any amendments or propositions that will be put forth as a result of this, because you can guarantee that as a result of whatever happens with this, good, bad, or indifferent from Trump, that you will see some changes on the ballot come the next election.
So I just want to ask you also a hypothetical question. So, I mean, I guess this grand jury report was really meant to inform Fani Willis's decisions in terms of, how she should move forward with prosecution. And she did indicate that prosecution would be imminent at the time that report came out in February. So she clearly already knows what's in it, right? So at this point, I mean, what's the point actually of even trying to quash a report like this? I mean, if in theory, I mean, just let's imagine hypothetically that they're successful in quashing this report, then what happens is a completely different prosecutor, restart an investigation, someone else in Fulton County, maybe somebody else from a different county. I mean,
well, they've asked for that. They've asked for, they filed motions to disqualify Fani and have her replaced. But, there are some benefits to Trump's team if it is that the report does not get in, because, again, this creates some procedural hurdles for Fani moving forward. Yes, she can charge them, but in terms of what the evidence that the grand jury was able to view, they still have some challenges in being able to get that put forth if it does make it to trial. And so there are some benefits that will come about from keeping the report from the grand jury out.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. So the other thing that while we have you here, I want to pick your brain on, this is not local, but this is a national story that actually broke yesterday. And before we knew about this, what's happening locally with the Georgia attorneys for Trump actually moving to quash the grand jury report, which is that Trump claimed that he was going to be arrested on charges related to kind of, paying off Stormy Daniels. And he actually called for protests. And now in New York, there is preparation underway for potential protests in response to all that. So what are your thoughts on that? Is it likely, is it possible that the former president would be arrested in this kind of this kind of alleged payout scheme?
It's not likely that we'll see an arrest. And honestly, just knowing, historically how Trump has behaved in the past, to me seems like some sort of preemptory strike, that he's letting the public know, he's letting all of his followers and his supporters know that this may be forthcoming out in hopes maybe that there will be some sort of decisions made to not move forward with the indictment. But I do not think an arrest would be likely in this set of facts.
Well, I want to ask you then about the timing. Is is that just a coincidence in your opinion that we're hearing about, first we hear about the potential of the former president being arrested, and then we hear that his legal team has quashed this Fulton County grand jury report. Are these things connected in your mind?
Absolutely. Trump is nothing if he's not strategic, and he has a whole bevy of attorneys, very skilled attorneys, who are all working in tandem, both here in Georgia and in New York, to make sure that they can get the best results. And a lot of times, the court of public opinion does carry a lot of weight, and these are factors for considerations when prosecutors are looking to move forward. And always in the back of everyone's mind is what will be the retaliation in all of this, what will happen in the community. And so those are certainly going to be factors for consideration. And Trump knows this, and this is why he does this. This is why he made this pronouncement that, hey, listen, I'm probably going to be arrested, when he knows, in fact, and I'm pretty sure none of his lawyers have advised him that there is a real possibility that there will be an actual arrest. But that does not stop him from making this known in hopes that this will, one thing will have an impact on the other. And so, yes, I do believe that they are all working strategically to kind of mitigate any damages that will be forthcoming this week.
Any final thoughts before we let you go?
We all just have to consider that this is a case of first impression. We all should just keep our eyes on this situation as it unfolds. I'm so very interested to see kind of what happens in this. I will come back and I will eat my words if Trump is arrested. I do not think that we will see that, but I definitely do think that we will see some movement like we have not seen over the past couple of years just this week alone.
Wow, very interesting. So something that we're definitely going to keep watching closely on both fronts. Attorney Erica Wilson, thank you so much for joining us here on Atlanta News First Plus. And I know we're going to share a bit more of your analysis on Atlanta News First with a report that I'm going to be presenting on our traditional newscast starting at 5 p.m. Really appreciate it, as always.